This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Charlie Shear,
Here.
Susan Arthur,
You're muted, Susan. Here?
okay, Mary Kara,
Here.
Vince Redwine,
Here.
Brett Evans.
Here. All right. Okay. First, let's see. We want to welcome everybody, but I don't think we've got anybody else in the queue, so I'm not going to go through all of the house things this morning. I don't think there's any need in that, so let's just go ahead and approve the minutes from our April 28th meeting. Any discussion?
I'll move to approve them.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Second by Spence, or was it Brett? Brett, okay. Have a motion with a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries. All right, public hearings. Let's go to 5A.
All right, I'm working there. Hang on. I've got some issues on my end. All right. Morning, everyone. This is item
Morning.
5A. Receive a report, hold a discussion, and conduct a public hearing. Take action on the replat of Lot 2, the replat of Lots 2, 3, and 4 of Shelton subdivision, in addition to the city of Denison, Texas. This is case number 2020-007RP. The applicant is requesting to replat 2 lots into 4 lots. Staff recommends approval. Here's an aerial, the area that we're discussing. You have Washington running to the south, and it got cut off, but that's Ray to the north. See Ray Drive here a little better. So here's the zoning of the subject properties. At some point, these were rezoned to 2-family duplex. They're the only lots in this area zoned 2-family duplex on this block. If you go further south along Lane, you'll find some more 2-family duplex as well. The applicant in this situation, or in this project, is proposing to slice these up into 4 to allow themselves to build a total of 4 duplex units, one on each of these lots. Originally looking at this submittal, we realized that Carroll Drive, even though it's platted and it has been dedicated, it doesn't exist. It was never constructed.
Oh.
However, we still wanted the applicant to move forward. So to help them move along, what we ended up doing was getting with Public Works and Fire, some other folks, and the applicant, and allowing an easement in the middle of the property, so that way the duplexes towards the rear can have access to a public right-of-way and have adequate emergency services connectivity or access.
Okay.
For any questions that you may have, and we recommend approval.
I have
Any
a
questions?
question about the property south of that. I think that's owned by Carol Smith. Is that right?
I'm not sure who the property owner is to the south. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about this property right here?
I think it might be, I can't remember, but the names were on one of the other renderings you had, and I don't have that in front of me. But Carol Smith, I think, may have needed rear access to her home, and I don't know if she's even still with us. So that would just be a concern for me if that was abandoned. I think she was the farthest down by the cul-de-sac area. I think she would have been in that area.
My understanding is that this isn't abandoned. It just hasn't been constructed yet.
Okay. And it probably won't be.
Yes, the applicant isn't asking to have that alley or public right-of-way vacated. It's just not built on right now. So
Okay.
it still exists.
Any other questions of staff? All right, this is a public hearing, so I'll give opportunity to anyone to speak in favor Anyone to speak opposed? I don't see any. I'm going to close the public hearing, entertain a motion.
I'd like to move to approve the replat of the Shelton's subdivision.
Susan will second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mary, second by Susan. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Item 5B.
Item 5B, receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a request for approval of a rezone of Lot 14, Block 18 of the original town plant, Denison, Texas, more commonly known as 109 West Morton Street, from commercial to single-family 5, case number 2020-041Z. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from commercial to single-family 5 zoning district. 2018 comprehensive plan shows this area to be developed as a neighborhood. City staff recommends approval. Here's an aerial. You can see Austin to the west. And
Is that grid just skewed a little bit?
Yes.
yes, yeah, the property lines are canted off a little bit because these are taken from, I guess, not a satellite, but like a drone, and then we went and overlaid the lot lines on top. So it's off a little, but I do have the survey in the packet as well. But it's a vacant lot. There's nothing else on there.
50 by 150 lot.
That's correct.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
looks like you could just shift the whole grid over.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty off, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is another one of those northeast part of town issues that we've got with that whole subdivision over there, that whole area of town over there.
So we're just continuing.
Yeah, all we're doing is just changing it back to what it should have been to begin with. So, anybody else got questions of staff? Okay, anyone here to speak for or against this case? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of the ordinance to change the zoning of the subject property from commercial to single-family 5 pending final legal review.
Second, Brett.
Okay, got a motion by Mary, second by Brett. All in favor, aye.
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 Okay, any noes? Seeing none, motion carries. Item 5C.
Manjeet, you're up.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for bearing with us while we're virtual here. So this is a continuation of part of our discussion that we had about a month ago on a series of code amendments that staff felt were appropriate to address some urban design and environmental and state law consistency needs. And so I'll kick this off here. Talking about fencing and grading were the two follow-up items that the commission asked us to do some work on based on some comments, and this reflects that effort. Next slide. Let's see, next slide. There we go. Okay, we'll go one more slide, Bill, since I talked over 5C. So the fence amendment, what we heard was concern about the level of changes that would affect private property in areas that didn't necessarily have a lot of public visibility, and as well as the height of the fence, but an understanding of the impact that fences have on the public realm in terms of how they look and the quality of fences. So the amendment addresses a couple of things. One is it no longer proposes to limit the height of fences to 6 feet throughout the city. So you can continue to do 8 foot tall fences, except the change would be along what are designated as master thoroughfare roadways by the city's comprehensive plan. And so that's in your agenda report as an attachment. And essentially it's the more major roads, what are often called collector streets and arterial roadways. So like Morton as an example, or Tome. Those are some of the examples that are shown in the map. So those master thoroughfare roadways, fences would be limited to 6 feet in height, and when they're facing the public view and outside of the setback area. Additionally, the quote unquote friendly side of the fence would need to face outward. And the reason for that is there's a balance between the public and the private interest along these major roadways because they traverse the city, and members of the public use them rather than being focused on, say, a neighborhood street that's really just for accessing a couple of homes. So this example shows what happens when there's a fence that's within the setback throughout the city. So there's another change being made where on corner lots, the fences would be limited to 5 feet in height and need to be 25% transparent when within the setback. So what I mean by that is, say the setback along the street side yard on a corner lot is 15 feet. If you want to put a fence within 10 feet of your property line / right of way, then the fence needs to be 5 feet in height at the maximum and 25% open. And this example attempts to show what that could look like. There are myriad fence styles, but this is one where you would see that example. So again, that's only when it's within the setback, and that applies to corner lots anywhere in the city, be it master thoroughfare roadway or a local roadway in a quiet residential area. If you wanted to have a taller fence, you just keep it outside of the setback, and you could either be 6 feet or along a master thoroughfare roadway, or you could be 8 feet elsewhere, as long as it's outside that, in the example of 15-foot setback. Bill, next slide.
Yeah, got some more fence exhibits for you.
Okay. Another slide showing us a shadow box style fence that has some minimal transparency. And another one, Bill?
Yeah, and then one more.
That one, is this the last one, Bill?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. There is in the infill area, because that part of town is older and a lot of it was built before there was zoning, there's a provision in there to allow some flexibility for the director to allow some reduction in where a fence could be located, so it could be closer to the street, provided there's some softening of the view of the fence, likely through landscaping. So some provision for flexibility is allowed at the director level to ensure that reasonable flexibility is provided without sending them all the way to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that was also based on some feedback about some peculiar situations in the infill area. Otherwise, in the fence amendment, there's some non-substantive cleanup items and just some clarification of language in the code amendment. Next slide, Bill.
That's all I have for you.
Okay. So going on, Kimberly, do you want me to talk about grading, or do you want to talk about grading, or is Carrie there? I can't quite see.
I don't think Carrie's on. Charlie, do you wish to stop and comment on fence, or do you want to hear the changes to the grading and then discuss as a whole?
Well, let's go ahead and discuss any changes on fencing.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't guess I have any major issues with what's being discussed this morning, because I think if you want a taller fence, all you got to do is put it at the building line or inside the building line, and you're okay. So that's what I'm following there. If we put it on the property line, you can comply with what we're talking about this morning. But if we push it to the building line or setback line inside that, then you can do the taller fence. I think that the transparency part of it, I'm okay with it, I guess. I think you're probably going to open the door for a number of Board of Adjustment cases are going to increase as far as fencing is concerned, because you got people with dogs, and you take that fence, for example, right there. You you got kids walking down the street and they see a pretty dog and they stick their hand through the fence to pet the dog and the dog bites them. You know, and I mean, that may sound like a far-fetched concept, but it's highly possible. So, you know, and so then all of a sudden the homeowner becomes liable for the animal, and so you know, I think Board of Adjustments is going to see a lot of cases that are going to concern the transparency part of it. I mean, there would the shadow box fence would be a way to avoid that. You know, I don't know that anybody's going to build a picket fence like that one was. I don't know that anybody's going to do that, but that fence there would help to negate, you know, the liability issues maybe. So, I mean, I just think that those are things that probably we need to think about because I think they will happen, you know.
Well, I have a question. One of the things that's really not what we're making a decision about is just clarification for me because someone asked me about it, and that's the number 3 under the materials not allowed was welding wire fabric. And then it goes on to say, unless specifically allowed by this section. So seems like there's some private owner, like what Charlie was talking about. If you had dog runs or I don't know, other animals that you needed to contain in your yard, there might be need for that. Would that be in the other section that's not in the primary fencing, but inside the fenced yard?
So on those provisions, staff had not proposed any changes, so the ability to do fence materials or not would continue.
Right, we're not deciding anything with that. It's just clarification of, we're talking just about the materials that are used in the environmentally visible fencing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mary, if you put up a fence like the picture there and you have a little dog that can slip through and you put some kind of wire material or something that, you know, runs along the inside of your fence to keep the dog from slipping through, I don't think that's a big deal. What this is saying, which was in the original language, was you can't build a fence, a whole
Out of that
fence
material.
6 feet
Correct.
high made out of
That's
metal
what I was
fabric
guessing. Yeah,
or steel. So, but if you have a little dog, for example, you know, and you know he's gonna slip through and you put up a little bit of something along that's a foot or 2 feet, that's not what this is about.
yeah,
Does
because
that
it won't be
help?
visible. It's just interior.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we still allowing chain link?
Or something.
I decided not to touch that one, Charlie, but if you feel that it's up for discussion, I'm happy to move in that direction.
So if you look at section 2853-2 D, oh, sorry, D or F, there we go. It says when chain link fencing is used, it shall include metal posts, post caps, and metal top rails. So the answer is yes, chain link fences are not changed in the ordinance.
I don't know that I would be opposed to us saying if you want to use a chain link fence, we'd like to see it be a coated chain link fence. But that might be taking things too far.
I would support that, but it's up to you all. Maybe in the front yard.
Man, I just don't like fences in the front yard, period. I just don't. You know, Bill and I sat down the other day when he came by to get some plats signed, and we did a little sketch. And, you know, if you don't have fencing past the front building line, it just eliminates all of the visibility triangle issues.
Yes.
You know, you don't have any vision impairment. You know, you take that fence down that property line up to the front of the street, and, you know, you've got issues if you're the second car behind it. So I don't know. I've worked in so many cities over the years in the Metroplex that just does not allow any fencing in the front yards. And, you know, I guess I'm accustomed to it. And to me, it just takes away from the house. It takes away from the whole setting. But that's my opinion. That's not a big deal. But the chain link, I mean, I understand chain link, but you know, they're not the most attractive things. They look somewhat institutional, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, this is just an opinion, but I think that when we're talking about just those high visibility areas, it sounds like we're looking at, you know, I mean, pipe and cable is something that looks great out Georgetown Road, but it doesn't look
Yeah.
great in downtown Denison. So
Right.
that's the way I feel about the chain link fence too. There's, you know, you want to put in a dog run and you've got 40 acres, go for it. You know, it's just, do you want chain link fence any place you can see from your front yard from the street in the city? And I would say no. You know, that's me.
Again, I mean, if it's a coated chain link, it takes on a whole different look.
Yes, especially if it's green and you've got green
Or,
grass. You don't even
or
see-
black too. I mean, it kind of fades away, so it's not nearly as obtrusive, I don't think. But it's up to the commission as to whether or not they want to consider that this morning.
I've also seen some pretty black wrought iron fences in town in the front.
Yeah. Now, wrought iron is allowed by code, isn't it, Kimberly?
Yes. Yes,
I'm
it is.
kind of a new, so I don't know.
So, and there's a height restriction on the fencing in the front too, correct?
4 feet.
Okay.
Gets
All right,
at
which is-
your visibility issue.
So I'm okay. I mean, we're okay, I think, on the wrought iron part. I think it's just the chain link that, do we want to eliminate it? Or do we want to come up with some way of maybe you requiring a coated chain link so that it's not as obtrusive? Or do we not want to do anything? Come on, Brett, talk. You're looking like you want to say something.
I don't have a problem with it, with requiring it to be coded.
Just the front yard or everywhere?
Well, especially if it's on a corner where we've got visibility from the right of way.
Yeah, I think mainly if it's,
Front yard and visibility from right of way would be, if you're an interior lot, it's not that big a deal,
Okay.
Well, your neighbors ain't gonna like it, but they can put up a wood fence and eliminate it. But I think if it's right of way or in the front, then I think we definitely need to, personally, I would say no chain link in the front, period. End it. And then if you have chain link on a right of way, then it has to be coded.
Do we
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
have a majority there for that?
We got a majority,
Yeah.
guys?
Yes.
Spence?
Yeah, I don't
Susan?
Yes.
chain link period. So yeah, I'm for that.
I think we do, Kimberly.
Oh, wait. Okay, so let me rephrase it one more time. No chain link in the front yard at all. Chain link on corner lot or rear has to be coded,
Yeah, if visible from a public right of way.
visible from the
Right.
public right away. Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
before or if you're about to switch over to the grading, I had one quick question on the fencing, on the transparency part. Is that only if it is outside of your building line? Or the setback line?
Yes. And G, do you want to speak up?
Yes, can you just ask me that one more time? I just want to make sure I understood correctly.
The transparency requirement, does that only come into play when the fence is built outside of the setback lines?
When it's inside the setback line, so it's closer to the
Right,
street.
right, right. I guess inside, what, I guess that it's not within the setback period.
When it's outside the setback. Correct. When it's outside of the setback, then it may be solid.
All right.
Any questions? Can we move forward with that, guys?
Yep.
Mary?
I'm just
You
gonna
good
leave
with
this
what?
folder. I mean, Jude, if you want to continue about grading.
Okay, Kimberly, do you want me to take care of that, or do you want to provide any comments on grading?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so this is another of the series of code amendments that the commission asked us to do some work on, and that was to primarily clarify the purpose and intent of the ordinance. And just as way of background, Federal Clean Water Act requires a lot of things to ensure that the quality of water is maintained, and there's regulations that the state prepares to implement the Clean Water Act, and then ultimately permits are issued to municipalities to address clean water, and grading that definitely has an effect on the quality of water, and to ensure consistency with the discharge permits and the like for the city. This grading ordinance will help us maintain fidelity with clean water regulations. So that's part of the purpose there. And also to ensure quality urban design and that buildings are constructed safely and property is protected. So those are some of the purposes and intents of the ordinance that the commission asked us to clarify in the ordinance itself, but also asked us to differentiate more between land uses and size of properties, and then also to clarify that there wouldn't be duplication of requirements in submitting for a grading permit, that if there was other activities that covered it, and those would qualify for the permit requirements. So that's just a quick overview. If you look at the actual ordinance itself, so this is all new text in a section of the zoning code to be determined by the codifier. It starts with the purpose and need and discusses the issues around soil erosion and the loss of vegetation, and also safeguarding persons and property, and provides for the rules and regulations regarding that earthwork activity. And then in section B, it talks about when a grading permit is required. So when a project is required to have a grading plan under the stormwater regulations, then it needs to fulfill the requirements of this section, as well as in circumstances when it's otherwise not required to have it. And then it goes into more detail about when a permit is required. And then if you get into section 10, that gets into the differentiation for residential properties. And as we touched on earlier, and as the Deputy Director of Public Works has mentioned to staff, that there are some complications that we've had with some of the smaller infill lots. So this clarifies how those would be handled. And then their definitions at the end. So that's a quick overview, and the commission's comments were helpful to clarify what we were intending to do there, and to minimize the amount of process required, and to recognize their differences in the types of construction occurring in the city, and to address those individually. So with that, we are here to answer any questions, and appreciate the feedback from a month ago.
Any questions?
I just say I appreciate all your hard work in putting it together. It reads well.
Thank you, and I'll pass it on to the Deputy Director of Public Works as well.
Okay, let's talk about grading permits. Let's go down to item 10 under grading permit. It's on attachment 4.
Okay.
Residential properties under 1 acre will be required to have a grading permit with a grading plan prepared by an applicant, engineer, or landscape architect. Now, is that something that we require presently, or is this part of what we are going to require?
Presently, we are asking the builders to show us how the site is getting graded off. We just haven't made it official. But we've had so
Okay.
many problems with it that we want to codify it and say, you know, you need to give some thought to how the house is going to sit, where it's going to be graded, where to be sure that the water doesn't run into the neighbor's property.
Neighbor's property.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we had talked about doing that, and I think in our last meeting, that on some of the simpler
Correct.
lots that we could just use arrows to show water flow and that kind of thing.
That's
Not
right.
necessarily, because when in my world, when I see the word grading plan, okay, that takes a whole new meaning on right there.
You see
And
dollar signs?
well, not just that, it's just on a grading plan, you really should engage a civil engineer on a grading plan. That shouldn't be someone, because hydraulics is a real important element in our daily life. And when it rains like it has rained the past few days, and you drive around Denison, you'll understand why hydraulics is important.
Right.
So I see the word grading plan, and that's what pops into my head.
Sure.
The other thing that I see that concerns me is a grading permit. Right now, when we go in to build a house, I have to get a building permit. And then we have to get a driveway permit, because that driveway is the approach is in the city's right of way. So therefore, they permit that separately. The fence is permitted separately. Now we're going to have to do a grading plan, which would be permitted separately. So
Well,
what we're doing is we're burdening our builders with permits. What I would like to see happen, if possible, I'm not opposed to making them do something that would be along the lines of showing water flow, but let's don't require a separate permit if possible. Let's include it in the building permit and make the submission of that drawing required for the permit so that we know what's going on. Because if we just keep adding permit after permit after permit, we're going to discourage people from coming here.
So Charlie, those are all really good comments. Staff is tasked with creating the applications and materials. It's not the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You're making an assumption that there's going to be an additional permit. As we've discussed at the last meeting, we intend to incorporate it into the building permit process with the site, the plan, the sketch, the survey that is submitted with the application on those smaller projects. We do not anticipate causing any additional cost or time to the builder, since they need to know where the water's going in the first place. So this is more documented with us what you're doing. So I want to reassure the commission that we are very sensitive to the amount of permits, the time, the cost, all of that. And our goal is to streamline and make it simpler, not to cause more problems. However, we don't want to get a call 5 years from now because they're getting flooded out and it's the city's fault because the builder didn't take consideration. So
yeah, and I want to give you a perfect example. The lots that we had over on Maple Row that were part of the affordable program that the city gave us, we're having issues with every one of those, every one of them.
yeah.
And they weren't, when the city replatted that and started divvying them out, nobody stopped to look at the grading on those things.
Yeah.
And so, now we're faced with problems on every one of those lots. There was problems with the fact that we couldn't get sewer to them because the sewer main was so shallow that that by the time we got the sewer line over there, our line was underneath the city's main, so they had to come back in and redo it. And so a lot of that, falls back up on the city didn't do their due diligence on those things before they divvied them out. But I agree that there is an issue, and it is a law that we can't take water on our neighbor's property, and nobody seems to understand that around here.
And I think this is a compromise, Charlie, otherwise we could require builders to get engineered plans, but we don't want to. We don't want to do that on these infill properties, the ones that we know that there's a simpler, easier way to do it.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to what we're talking about, with the infield and even on the single. Of course, if they're in a single family development, that's a recent development,
They're going to have
that stuff's already been taken into consideration to begin with,
That's
so, but it's the older part, the infield part, and I don't have a problem with us making them put, to show us this is where the water's flowing so that we know. I don't have a problem with that at all.
So when we get that material together, what we'll do is in the application, we'll just amend it to explain that to builders, when they're applying.
Right.
We'll follow back up with you just to let you know how we're implementing it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound,
Yeah.
is that good?
I think that's good. I tell you what we could do too, Kimberly, is, of course, we haven't had one lately because of COVID, but I'm assuming that we'll probably be having another one pretty soon, is when we have our quarterly builder meetings with the mayor and city manager.
Yep.
A lot of this new information and new procedures could be,
So what we'll do, Charlie, is I had that email drafted and then I was out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep adding to the list.
Okay.
That builder meeting, not the one with city manager and mayor, but the one that I'm going to hold to further what was discussed there. And
Right.
so, again, another example of an item to get input on, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm toying with the idea of going to our building community and us putting together an association of our home builders outside, of course, the city, to where we could have a monthly lunch meeting or something, not formal or anything. We just get together and we discuss a lot of stuff, issues that we might come up with that we need to take to the city, and then vice versa. So I think
That's
that
exactly what I'm thinking. I was going to call it kind of a stakeholder group as we, start rolling into our land use amendments, but I think it's great.
Okay.
Well, Charlie, I think, and Kimberly too, we've had 2 cases now that have come before planning and zoning where it looked to me like it was the citizens who were the first ones to realize that there was an erosion problem nearby that needed to be attended to. And the building plans had not addressed that. The one off of Crawford and then the other one off of Francis, and both that senior development. I don't think either of those have moved forward, so it's kind of become a non-issue, but both of those had erosion problems that concerned citizens came before planning and zoning. It seems like those things like that should be addressed before it gets that far.
Well, I think those things will be, because on a commercial development like that, a new construction commercial development, they're going to have to submit grading plans, drainage plans, infrastructure plans, so that we will have a handle on those. I think what our concern is, and Kimberly, correct me if I'm wrong, is that especially in our central area where we're doing the revitalization and our affordable housing programs, those areas of town in the old, where there is very little infrastructure, no stormwater, systems to speak of. That's where the problems are.
Right.
We've got a house that I'm supposed to start construction on for some folks over at Tone and Day, and we've taken 4 lots, platted them into one. We did the plat not too long ago, but the problem is that we have so much water coming down Day Street from the west towards the east, and it's coming down the right of way, and then it turns and goes right across their lot, right down into the neighbor, which is a little bit lower than what we are. And it has created an unbelievable mess over there. And you know, but you look at Day Street, there's no curb, there's no gutter, there's nothing there to control that water that's coming down, and it comes right down the right of way and right onto that lot. And I've addressed it with Jimmy, and we're trying to do what we can to, you know, fix it and be able to get a house on the lot. But there are a lot of problems within the central area when it comes to drainage. A lot of them.
And
So-
Mary, you bring up a good point. In the last 2 years, we've tightened up our review and analysis of stormwater and drainage plans and our civils. We've hired engineers to help us review all those plans and make sure they're in conformance, at least preliminarily, before they even get to you on these commercial projects.
That's
and
great.
we haven't had any more problems since then. So
Good.
we've tightened things up. We've got folks on board, and we're holding folks, our applicants to those requirements and saying, you got to address this. So it's been a slow road, but the folks that we're working with on a regular basis, our developers and builders for the larger projects, are very understanding and understand everyone has to do this. So
Thank you.
we're not seeing the problems that we were.
Anything else on this, guys?
Not for me.
Y'all good with what we've done on the drainage here?
I am.
Okay. I think we're good, Kimberly.
Okay.
Do we need to have a formal vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So do we want to include the fencing and the grading in this motion?
Yes, with the amendments that you discussed with the chain
Okay.
link.
Okay. And
That was
plus
fine.
the chain link. All right. With the amendments of the chain link. All right. Who would like to make that motion?
I'll do it.
All right, Mary, take off.
I move to recommend approval of the proposed amendments to Denison Municipal Code, Chapter 28, as more particularly described in the Planning and Zoning Agenda Report for the meeting of May 26, 2020.
It's a mouthful. Okay. We got a second.
I second that.
Okay. Spence Redwine second. All in favor? Aye.
And then
Aye.
sorry to interrupt. And then with the amendment that there be no chain link in the front and that chain link on a corner lot or the rear, if visible from the right of way, would be coded. So that would
She
be.
included that, Mary.
I'll
Okay.
amend my motion to include the chain link fencing corrections on the front. No chain link.
Okay, so her motion with the amendments concerning chain link fence.
Okay, that
Second.
works as described by
Good,
staff.
Nikki? Okay.
Yes, that's good as described by staff.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, 6A.
Staff updates. So we just talked before the meeting started that we are going to be able to meet in person next month. So we're very excited about that down in City Hall chambers. So I want to make sure you all knew that. Also, I think you may have received an email from Chris Valentine, our city clerk, regarding a new handbook for boards and commissions. So I'm really excited about this handbook. It's very comprehensive. It contains a lot of information to help all board members understand their role, the role of staff, the role in the bigger picture of other boards and commissions. And Charlie, I want to know if the board would be interested in taking some time, maybe at the next meeting, and just going over it in a little more detail. I know that Susan's joined us recently, and she hasn't even gotten the private the private tour yet with staff, and I greatly apologize for that, Susan. But this would be a great opportunity to kind of refresh everybody.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Anything else?
Well, we've been working on changing and updating our internal processes and the way that we manage projects. And at the next meeting, I think it'd be great to share with you some of what we've been working on internally to be able to manage our projects, and then also a guidebook or guideline that we've been working on and she's been helping us with. I realize that you haven't been receiving updates on what's, moved forward after it's seen you, or stuff that didn't even go through you that you might be interested in learning more about. We
Okay.
do have an update. The weekly update from the city manager does go out. Are you all on that email?
I
Yes,
don't think so.
I am.
I'm
You are?
not.
Okay. So that might be a great mechanism to also keep you updated in an easy way, because we add a few items to that each week on what we're working on.
That'd be good.
All right. All right, guys, thank y'all so much. It's a pleasure to get to work with you guys. I think we make a lot of progress as a commission, and I think staff and commission work well together. And it's just, I think we're seeing some good things are happening in Denison as a result of your efforts, and I appreciate that. Seeing nothing else before the board this morning, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. We stand adjourned at 10:47.